dare enter, a place forgotten by time, where shadows breathe, and the dead still remember. Sit, watch, and do not look away.
The road twisted like a serpent through the withering fields, a narrow ribbon of cracked asphalt leading toward the forgotten edges of town. The headlights of my car struggled against the creeping mist, throwing pale, flickering beams into the darkness. It was the kind of night when the air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to break the silence. I had never heard of Black Hollow before. It wasn't on any maps I could find. When the letter arrived, thick parchment, handwritten in a shaky, ancient hand, it felt like a mistake. A distant relative, some great aunt I never knew, had passed away, and she had left me her house. The thought of escaping my life, even for a little while, was too tempting to resist. I packed what little I owned into my battered car and left the city behind, chasing the promise of a fresh start. The town sign was a rusted slab of metal barely clinging to a leaning post. Welcome to Black Hollow population. Someone had scratched out the number. As I drove deeper into the town, the world seemed to decay around me. The houses sagged inward, their windows gaping like open mouths. Yards were choked with dead grass and rusted remnants of forgotten lives. And in the center of it all stood Agnes' house. It was impossible to miss, a hulking Victorian monstrosity perched atop a hill, overlooking the town like a rotting crown. Its spires stabbed at the sky. The paint was peeled away by years of neglect, and the windows were nothing but dark, empty eyes. I parked at the foot of the hill and stared up at the house. It stared back. The key was still warm in my hand, though I didn't remember gripping it so tightly. I forced myself out of the car, my boots crunching against the gravel path that wound up to the front door. Wind whispered through the fields behind me, carrying with it the faintest sound of something calling. Come home. I froze. The voice was barely more than a sigh against my ear. But there was no one there. Swallowing my fear, I climbed the steps. The porch groaned beneath my weight. The front door loomed tall and crooked, its surface scarred by age and violence. The key slid into the lock far too easily, and with a shuddering creak, the door swung inward. Darkness spilled out to greet me. I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to turn around, to leave this place behind. But something stronger pulled me forward. Something ancient. Something hungry. The air inside was thick with dust and the sour, sweet smell of rot. My footsteps echoed into the void as I stepped over the threshold. The house groaned, shifting slightly as if settling its old bones around me. I flicked on my flashlight. The beam cut a narrow swath through the gloom, illuminating faded wallpaper that peeled like dead skin from the walls. Portraits lined the hallway, grim faces watching, judging. Their eyes seemed almost alive, glinting faintly in the beam of my light. At the end of the hall was a staircase, sprawling upward into deeper darkness. Beside it, a narrow door hung slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of another room. The living room, maybe. I stepped toward it, my breath catching in my throat. Something moved inside. Just a flicker. A shadow pulling itself away from the deeper black. I whipped the flashlight toward it, but there was nothing there. Just a broken chair, its cushions torn open and spilling stuffing onto the floor. A cold fireplace yawning wide and empty. Tattered curtains stirring in a breath that didn't exist. I swallowed hard. It's just the house settling, I whispered to myself. But the words sounded hollow. Still clutching the flashlight, I edged deeper inside. The living room was massive, filled with the skeletal remains of once grand furniture. In the center of the room, a massive mirror hung from the wall, cracked down the center like a wound. My reflection stared back at me, distorted and wrong. Something moved behind me. I spun around. Again, nothing. The house was empty, dead, and yet not. I turned back to the mirror and froze. There, in the reflection, standing at the top of the staircase, was a figure. A woman, pale, still, watching me. I turned to look, but the staircase was empty. My heart pounded against my ribs. I stumbled back from the mirror, dropping my flashlight. It rolled across the floor, its beam spinning wildly. The shadows in the room shifted and stretched, writhing toward me. Scrambling, I grabbed the flashlight and bolted from the room, slamming the narrow door shut behind me. The house shuddered. A low groan, almost a moan, echoed from deep within its bones. And then a silence. I stood there, trembling, staring at the door. Something about this house was wrong. Deeply wrong. And whatever it was, it knew I was here. I forced myself to move. Standing there in the hall, paralyzed by fear, was exactly what it wanted. I didn't know what it was yet, but every instinct in my body screamed that something in this house was alive and watching. I needed to find the master bedroom, somewhere to hole up for the night, somewhere I could bolt the door if necessary. I moved cautiously, my flashlight's beam jittering over the cracked walls and collapsed furniture. Every few steps the floorboards creaked underfoot, groaning like something ancient and wounded. The air grew colder as I climbed the staircase. The higher I went, the thicker the dust became, clinging to every surface like a gray shroud. My footsteps left clear prints in it, and I hated how easily I could imagine another set of footprints appearing beside mine. At the top of the stairs, a long corridor stretched out in both directions. The walls were lined with closed doors. At the far end of the hall, something glinted, a window. The mist outside pressed against it, writhing against the glass like living smoke. I chose the first door on the right. The bedroom was huge, but desolate. A massive four-poster bed stood against one wall, its canopy sagging with rot. A dressing table sat opposite, its mirror shattered into 1,000 sharp, glittering teeth. There was no power, of course. No warmth. Only silence, heavy and suffocating. I dropped my backpack on the floor and began to set up a crude camp. Sleeping bag, flashlight propped up on a chair, a few energy bars, a bottle of water. I tried not to look at the mirror, tried not to think about the figure I had seen downstairs. Tried and failed. The house creaked and shifted around me, and more than once, I thought I heard footsteps padding softly along the hall. Once, I even thought I heard my name whispered from the darkness outside the room. "Come home, Sarah." I froze. My name. The voice had been soft, coaxing. A woman's voice. I grabbed the flashlight and aimed it toward the door. Nothing. Just darkness pressing against the threshold like a tide. I waited, heart hammering, but no footsteps came. No shadows moved across the crack beneath the door. Eventually, I forced myself to lie down. Sleep was impossible, but I closed my eyes anyway, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here. At some point, I drifted into a fitful doze, only to jolt awake with a start. The room was freezing. My breath misted in front of me. The flashlight had rolled onto its side, casting a slanting beam across the floor. And there, in the beam, were footprints. Bare footprints. Small, delicate. leading from the door straight toward my sleeping bag. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. The footprints ended right beside me. Something had been standing there, watching me as I slept. I scrambled to my feet, flashlight darting wildly around the room. No one. Nothing. But the footprints were real, pressed deep into the dust. I backed toward the door, my heart slamming against my ribs. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. A prank? Some local messing with me? But the town was nearly abandoned. And who could have moved so silently, without waking me? No. There was something else in this house. Something old. Something patient. I needed to leave. Now. I grabbed my backpack and tore open the door, only to find the hallway cloaked in a thick, soupy mist. It poured from the broken window at the end of the hall, spilling toward me like living fingers. I stumbled back, coughing, gagging on the foul, what smell of decay. The mist surged forward. And in it, shapes moved, faces twisted in agony, hands clawing at the air, whispers threading through the fog. Stay, don't leave us, you're part of it now? I slammed the door and jammed a chair under the knob. It wouldn't hold for long, but it was all I had. I backed away until my calves hit the bed. The mist pressed against the door, seeping through the cracks, carrying with it the stench of graves and old, rotting things. And then, silence. The pressure eased. The mist ebbed away. I collapsed onto the bed, trembling. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat there, flashlight in hand, watching the door. Waiting. Morning, when it finally came, was a pale, sickly thing. Gray light seeped through the broken windows, doing little to chase away the shadows clinging to every corner. I hadn't slept. My muscles ached from tension. My eyes burned from staring at the door all night, afraid to even blink. But daylight gave me courage. I kicked the chair aside and yanked open the door. The hallway was empty. The mist was gone. I crept through the house, moving room to room, searching for something. Maybe answers. Maybe just a way to feel less helpless. Most of the rooms were ruined, time and decay having eaten away at them. In one, the ceiling had collapsed entirely, leaving a gaping hole that stared up into a sky the color of ash. In another, the floor had rotted through, the boards sagging dangerously. But it was the third room that made me stop. The nursery. Toys were scattered across the floor, old broken things. A wooden rocking horse sat in one corner, its paint flaking away. A dollhouse slumped against the wall, its tiny rooms empty and dusty. And on the far wall, scrawled in something dark and dried, were words. She never left. I stared at the message, my skin crawling. Who? Who had never left? Agnes? The name pressed against the inside of my skull, demanding attention. Agnes. The woman from the mirror? The voice in the mist? A creak behind me snapped me out of my thoughts. I spun around, flashlight raised. There, in the hallway, stood a little girl. She was maybe 6 years old, with long dark hair and a tattered white dress. Her eyes were huge, black pools in her pale face. She smiled at me. A slow, sad, broken smile. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. And then she was gone, vanished like smoke. I stumbled back into the nursery, heart hammering. My mind reeled. Had I imagined her? Was I hallucinating from fear and exhaustion? But the smell of her lingered, a scent like old flowers and damp earth. I had to get out. Now. I bolted back down the hallway, down the crumbling stairs, into the main hall. The front door loomed ahead. I sprinted toward it and slammed into an invisible wall. Pain exploded through me, knocking the breath from my lungs. I scrambled to my feet, dazed. Reached for the doorknob. It refused to turn. I kicked the door, pounded it with my fists, screamed. Nothing. It was like trying to move a mountain. The house wouldn't let me go. I staggered back, gasping. And that's when I saw it. Carved into the wood of the door, faint, almost invisible in the weak light, was a symbol. A crude circle, filled with twisted, knotted lines. I didn't recognize it. But it filled me with a dread so deep it was almost paralyzing. Some kind of seal. A binding. Someone had trapped something in this house. Something terrible. And by entering, I had set it free. Or worse, I had taken its place. A faint laughter echoed through the house, curling around me like smoke. The portraits on the walls seemed to sneer now, their painted eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. I turned in a slow circle, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. The house was alive. And it was waking up. I stumbled backward, retreating into the center of the hall as the walls seemed to close in. The house groaned around me, as if stretching its ancient limbs, savoring its first full breath in years. I needed a plan. Panic was clawing at my throat, but panic would get me killed. Think, Sarah. Think! If I couldn't leave through the front door, and maybe there was another way out. A back door. A basement window. Anything. I tightened my grip on the flashlight and bolted toward the kitchen. It was a tomb. Ancient appliances rusted to dust, cabinets sagging open to reveal nests of spiders and mold. But there, beyond a collapsed pantry, was another door. I lunged for it, yanking it open. A stairwell plunged downward into darkness. The basement. The air that rushed up to meet me was colder than ice. It smelled of mildew, wet earth, and something worse, something sharp and metallic. Blood. Every instinct screamed at me not to go down there. But I had no choice. I descended slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. Each step creaked under my weight, threatening to give way. The basement floor was dirt, uneven and damp. Rusted tools hung from the walls. Ancient jars filled with unidentifiable substances lined crumbling shelves. And at the far end of the room, a heavy wooden door. Unlike the rest of the house, it looked new. The wood was smooth, unstained by time. The iron handle gleamed as if freshly polished. Carved into its surface was the same symbol I had seen on the front door, but deeper, more deliberate. It pulsed faintly in the beam of my flashlight, as if breathing. I approached it slowly, heart thundering. The air grew colder with every step. When I reached out to touch the handle, my fingers recoiled instantly. It was freezing, burning cold. And from beyond the door, I heard a sound. A low, rhythmic thudding, like something huge beating against the earth itself. I pressed my ear to the door. Thud, Thud. Thud. It grew louder, faster, syncing with the frantic drum of my own heartbeat. And beneath it, a voice, a whisper, so faint I could barely make it out. Agnes. I jerked away from the door. No. No way. Whatever was behind that door, it wasn't human. It wasn't meant to be set free. A sudden crash from upstairs made me whip around. Something was moving through the house, heavy, deliberate footsteps. I had to move, had to hide. I scrambled back up the basement stairs, slamming the door behind me. The kitchen was empty, but the air was raw, thick and buzzing like the moment before a lightning strike. I crept into the hallway, every muscle tense. The portraits on the walls seemed to leer at me now, their painted mouths twisted into cruel smirks. At the base of the stairs I saw a figure. Tall, thin, wrapped in a black, tattered shroud that fluttered as if caught in a phantom wind. Its head was bent at an unnatural angle, face hidden in shadow. And it was waiting for me. It lifted one long skeletal hand and pointed up the stairs, commanding me, ordering me. Terror gripped me, but something deeper than terror answered. I found myself moving. One step, then another, drawn up the staircase like a puppet on invisible strings. The figure didn't follow. It watched. As I climbed, the air grew heavier, thicker, the weight of the house pressing down on me. At the top of the stairs, I turned left, back toward the bedroom I'd slept in. The door stood open. Inside, the room was transformed. The broken furniture was gone. The dust was gone. The air smelled sweet, like flowers at a funeral. And in the center of the room, standing beside the bed, was a woman. Agnes. I knew it was her, though I had never seen her face before. She was beautiful in a brittle, terrifying way, skin pale as bone, hair black as the night sky. Her eyes met mine. And I understood. She wasn't trapped here. She was the house. And she wanted me to stay. Forever. Agnes smiled, a slow, predatory smile that sent ice sliding down my spine. I tried to move, to run, but my body refused. It was like standing in the eye of a storm, silent, weightless, paralyzed. She lifted one delicate hand and beckoned to me. "Come home," she whispered. Her voice was soft, musical, and raw. Each word slid into my mind like a blade, slicing away at who I was, leaving something hollow behind. I stumbled forward, helpless. The bed loomed beside her now, pristine, draped in velvet sheets. It looked inviting, warm, safe. "Lie down," a voice inside me urged. "Just lie down. Sleep. Forget." Agnes reached out, her fingers brushing my cheek. They were cold as grave dirt. The room tilted, spinning around me. Visions swam before my eyes, memories not my own. Children playing in the nursery. A family gathered around a roaring fireplace. Laughter. Love. And then, screaming. Fire. Blood. I reeled back, gasping. Agnes' face twisted, no longer beautiful, but monstrous. Her mouth split too wide, revealing rows of broken, yellow teeth. Her eyes blackened, swallowing all light, Stay, she hissed. The room convulsed around us, walls buckling inward. Somehow, through the terror, I remembered the basement door, the seal carved into its surface. Whatever was down there, it wasn't Agnes. It was something older. Something even she feared. If I could reach it, maybe I could use it against her. I tore myself free from her grasp, stumbling backward into the hall. Agnes shrieked, a sound that shattered the air like glass. The floorboards heaved under my feet as I ran, the house fighting me every step. Doors slammed shut in my path. Pictures flew from the walls, shattering around me. The black-cloaked figure from before appeared at the end of the hall, motionless, blocking my path. I ducked into another room, a bathroom, and slammed the door. For a moment, silence. Then, a low, wet whispering from behind the shower curtain. My skin crawled. Slowly, I turned the flashlight toward it. The curtain billowed slightly, though there was no breeze. Something moved behind it. Something waiting. I backed away toward the door, only to have it wrench itself from my grasp and slam shut. Trapped. The whispering grew louder, filling the room, writhing inside my skull. I covered my ears, squeezed my eyes shut. Let us in, let us out, let us become. The curtain snapped open. There was nothing there, just an empty, mildewed tub. And a single handprint, small, childlike, smeared in something dark across the tiles. I bolted from the room, ignoring the screams that followed me down the hall. The house was alive now, fully awake, and it hated me. I half ran, half staggered back toward the stairs. The black figure was gone. The path to the basement lay open. I didn't hesitate. I plunged down into the darkness. The door at the bottom shuddered as I approached, whatever lay beyond it aware of me now, hungry. I placed my hand on the iron handle. Pain flared instantly, freezing cold lancing up my arm. I gritted my teeth and twisted. The door swung inward. Darkness, thicker than night, rushed out to meet me. And from within it, something moved. Something vast. Something wrong. It spoke without words, a presence slithering into my mind. Who breaks the seal becomes the seal. I stumbled back, but it was too late. Chains of shadow wrapped around my legs, my arms dragging me forward. I fought, kicking, screaming, but the darkness swallowed me whole. And above it all, I heard Agnes laugh. I plunged through the blackness, falling without falling, spinning without moving. The world around me dissolved into a cold, crushing pressure. Voices screamed in my ears, not in any language I knew, but full of agony, of rage, of hunger. Somewhere far above, I caught a glimpse of the basement ceiling, receding, like a mouth closing over me. And then, impact. I landed hard on something soft and yielding. The smell hit me instantly. Rot, blood, damp earth. I forced myself to sit up, gagging. The flashlight, miraculously still clutched in my hand, flickered barely strong enough to illuminate my surroundings. It wasn't the basement anymore. It wasn't anywhere human. The ground beneath me was a carpet of tangled roots and bones, slick with some viscous black substance. Above, the sky was a low, pulsating ceiling of flesh, veined and twitching like a living thing. In the distance, something massive moved, a heaving, breathing mountain of shadow. I scrambled to my feet, slipping on the wet ground. Somewhere, deep within the darkness, I felt Agnes' presence. Watching, laughing. And something else was here with me. Something old beyond comprehension. Something broken and furious. I wasn't just inside the house anymore. I was inside her. Inside the thing she had become. A prison of flesh and memory. And there was no way out. Unless I found the core. Every nightmare has a heart, a source. If I could destroy it, maybe, just maybe, I could escape. The landscape writhed around me as I moved, shifting with each step. Images flickered at the edges of my vision. Children huddled in the nursery, their faces hollow and gray. A man screaming as flames devoured him in the parlor. A woman, Agnes, weeping before a shattered mirror, her reflection warping into something monstrous. Each scene clung to me, dragging at my mind. "Stay," they whispered. "Become part of us." I pressed forward, teeth clenched. Ahead, through the shifting mist, I saw it. A tree, or what once had been a tree, now blackened and twisted, its bark split open to reveal throbbing veins. At its base, a door. The same door I had seen in the basement. The true door. The final seal. I ran toward it, but the ground exploded beneath me. Figures burst from the earth, skeletal, broken things wrapped in funeral rags. They clawed at me, shrieking in voiceless rage. I fought them off, swinging the flashlight like a club, shattering bone and rotted flesh. Hands closed around my ankles, my wrists, trying to drag me down into the muck. I kicked free, stumbled, fell, and crawled the last few feet to the tree. The door pulsed beneath my hands, alive, hateful. Carved into it was a single word. Agnes. I understood then. This wasn't just a haunting. It wasn't just a curse. It was a bargain. Agnes had made a pact with whatever dark thing lived beneath Black Hollow, in exchange for beauty, power, eternal life. And when the time came, she had paid the price. Her soul, and the house itself, became the vessel for something ancient and ravenous. I was never meant to inherit it. I was meant to replace her. Fresh blood. A new sacrifice. I slammed my fists against the door. It didn't budge. Behind me, the skeletal figures closed in, their jaws stretched wide in silent screams. I pounded harder, screaming in fury, in terror, in sheer defiance. I am not yours. The door shuddered. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. The earth beneath me quaked. The ceiling of flesh above split open, and black ichor rained down. The figures shrieked, recoiling. I drove my shoulder against the door one final time. With a sound like the tearing of the world itself, it shattered. Blinding white light exploded outward, swallowing everything. The ground, the sky, the figures, all burned away into nothingness. And then, silence. When the light faded, I found myself lying on cold, cracked floorboards. The basement. The real one this time. The house above groaned, its weight pressing down through the rotting beams, and dust choked air. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, a breath. Shallow, rasping. My own. I was alive. Somehow, against all odds, I had survived. I struggled to my feet, every muscle aching, every bone feeling too loose inside my skin. The basement door hung ajar behind me, shattered at its hinges. Beyond it, only darkness. But it was silent now. The oppressive weight, the writhing hunger, it was gone. Whatever Agnes had become, whatever had trapped me here, I had broken it. I staggered up the basement stairs, each step a monumental effort. The kitchen was a ruin. The ceiling had partially collapsed, beams jutting downward like broken ribs. But the front door was open. I almost wept at the sight. Morning light poured through the threshold, weak and gray, but real. I stumbled across the hall, past the twisted portraits, now cracked and faded, their faces empty of malice. The house was dying. Without Agnes, without the thing she had become, it was just wood and stone again, just a memory collapsing in on itself. I crossed the threshold and fell to my knees outside. The grass was wet with morning dew. The air was cold and sharp and filled with the scent of earth and growing things. Real. Alive. I lay there gasping, staring up at the pale sky. Above me, a house let out a final, rattling sigh. And then, like a sandcastle devoured by the tide, it began to crumble. Walls bowed inward. The roof sagged and split. Windows shattered outward in a cloud of glass and dust. In minutes, it was nothing more than a pile of broken timbers and shattered stone. Gone. And with it, Agnes. Or so I thought. I don't remember driving away from Black Hollow. The next clear memory I have is waking up in my car on the side of a highway, miles from anywhere. My clothes were stiff with dried mud and blood. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. But I was free. Or so I thought. The dreams started that night. At first they were vague, shadows moving at the edges of my vision, the sound of soft laughter just beyond hearing. Then, clearer. I saw her. Agnes. Standing at the foot of my bed, her face pale and smiling. "You're home now," she whispered. I woke screaming. Every night since, she comes. Watching. Waiting. I moved cities. Changed my name. Burned everything that tied me to Black Hollow. Nothing helped. She always finds me. Because I didn't break the curse. I only broke the house. The thing that was Agnes is still out there. And it's inside me now. I can feel it, coiled deep in my bones, whispering in my dreams. One day, I'll answer her call. One day, I'll go back. And when I do, I won't be Sarah anymore. I'll be part of Agnes. Forever.
The tale is over, but the darkness remains. Subscribe, or stay forever, in the silence between screams.